Je dis, ça c'est un bilan particulier parce que ce sont les premières œuvres, ça veut dire c'est pas le cinéma italien.
Sergio Leone is remembered today as the man who reshaped the American West, a director who stripped away the myth, exposed the greed, and showed a frontier not of heroes and noble destiny, but of dust, blood, betrayal, and uneasy survival. His films were not patriotic hymns. They were warnings, allegories, tragedies wearing cowboy hats. Leone believed every empire, whether Roman or American, eventually faces the mirror of its own mythology, and flinches. In his final years, Leone often spoke about the westerns that shaped him, not in the form of a neat public top 5 list, but scattered across interviews, essays, festival appearances, and conversations. Writers and historians later pieced them together, finding 5 titles that Leone repeatedly praised or analyzed. These were the works that did not just influence him, they provoked him, challenged him, and in some cases forced him to redefine what the Western could be. This is not a countdown of his favorite movies in the casual sense. It is a map, a roadmap to his worldview, his philosophy of violence, and the cinematic skeleton beneath his revolution. And it begins not in the American frontier, but in Japan. Number 5. Yojimbo, 1961. It is fitting that Sergio Leone's journey to redefining the American West begins not with a cowboy, a saloon, or a dusty frontier graveyard, but with a lone samurai walking into a broken town in feudal Japan.
用心棒にどうだ腕は今見せる
This origin is not a trivia footnote. It is the foundation of Leone's cinematic identity. For many viewers, Leone invented the modern anti-hero. But long before Clint Eastwood narrowed his eyes in the Spanish desert, Toshiro Mifune scratched his beard and surveyed a ruined street with the casual resignation of a man who expects disappointment. Kurosawa's Yojimbo did not simply influence Leone. It handed him the blueprint for a new kind of protagonist, a new kind of morality, and a new form of cinematic rhythm. Yojimbo tells the story of Sanjuro, a wandering ronin who arrives in a town split by warring factions, neither of which deserves loyalty. He does not protect the weak out of nobility, nor rise against the wicked out of principle. He is a hired blade, a strategist of survival, a man who recognizes that power does not lie in honor, but in manipulation. He studies the town like a gambler sizing up a table. Every gesture, every silence, every shrug of his shoulders carries the weight of someone who has lived among violence for so long that morality has become a luxury he cannot afford. This, more than anything, captivated Leone. Hollywood westerns before him were built on clear lines: the moral hero, the villainous outlaw, the righteous gunfight. Leone saw in Yojimbo the shattering of this simplicity. A protagonist who kills not because he must, but because he chooses when it suits him. A world where law does not exist, only leverage. Leone absorbed that worldview as if it were oxygen. It allowed him to treat the West not as a myth, but as a marketplace of violence. A place where men trade bullets the way merchants trade currency. Visually, Yojimbo was a revelation. Kurosawa used silence like a blade, streets empty except for dust and tension. Music erupting not as background, but as punctuation. Faces studied in close-up, not to reveal emotion, but to conceal it until the decisive moment. Leone studied these tools like a student studying scripture. It is no coincidence that the opening of Once Upon a Time in the West owes its life to Yojimbo's quiet brutality. Men waiting, nothing moving but wind and nerves. Violence arriving not suddenly, but inevitably. Then came the lawsuit. When A Fistful of Dollars premiered, Kurosawa recognized the story instantly. He sent Leone a letter, blunt, unimpressed, and direct. The case ended with Kurosawa receiving a substantial portion of the profits, reportedly more than he earned from Yojimbo itself. Many would have carried shame. Leone carried vindication. In his mind, cinema was not a national possession. It was global, fluid, inherited, and reborn with every retelling. He famously argued that Kurosawa had borrowed the narrative from American noir in the first place, and therefore he was merely bringing it back home. Whether or not one accepts the justification is beside the point. What matters is that Leone believed it sincerely. He believed in cinematic lineage, not ownership. Yet copying plot points is not what made Leone great. What made him transformative was how he translated tone. Eastwood's Man with No Name is quieter than Sanjuro, colder, stripped of all sentiment. His poncho hangs like armor, his silence weighs like judgment. Leone removed the last trace of idealism, even the playful cynicism Mifune sometimes hinted at. The samurai wandered toward survival, the gunslinger wandered toward nothing. Leone built a world where redemption does not exist because guilt is a privilege reserved for those who believe in forgiveness. There is an irony in this inheritance. Yojimbo itself was not traditionally Japanese in spirit. Critics long noted that its structure resembles American hard-boiled detective fiction. Cynical men, corrupt towns, ambiguous justice. Kurosawa borrowed from American noir. Leone borrowed from Kurosawa, and America embraced Leone's reinvention. The cycle is not theft, it is evolution. Cinema learns by imitation, and then it grows teeth. If Yojimbo had never existed, Leone would still have been a director. But without Yojimbo, he would not have been Sergio Leone. Not the architect of a genre, not the European voice that held a cracked mirror to American mythology. He did not copy a story. He discovered a spirit, a rhythm, a worldview that rejected polished legend in favor of raw human appetite. The Lone Wanderer existed before Yojimbo. He will exist long after. But in Kurosawa's film, Leone found the first version that looked honestly at the world. And in Leone's hands, that honesty would reshape the Western forever. In your view, is cinematic originality defined by who invents a story, or by who transforms it into something the world cannot forget? Number 4. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962. Before Sergio Leone pointed his camera at a wind-carved, sun-scorched frontier where men killed for profit and survival, the Western belonged to John Ford. Ford's films gave the frontier dignity. Wide prairies, honest sheriffs, weary but noble pioneers building a nation from dust and sweat. For decades, America accepted this as history. The Western was moral scripture, Ford its high priest. Then, in 1962, something happened that shook Leone deeply. John Ford doubted his own myth. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance opens like a eulogy. A senator returns to a frontier town to bury a forgotten rancher. What follows is not a tale of triumph, but a confession. James Stewart plays Ransom Stoddard, the model American, educated, lawful, committed to justice. John Wayne plays Tom Doniphan, the rugged man of action, the frontier embodied. Together, they represent America's self-image.
Valance couldn't make you run away. What is it now, Pilgrim? Your conscience?
Order versus wilderness. Civilization versus raw force. Law versus gun. The film slowly reveals that the legendary moment defining Stoddard's political career, the killing of the outlaw Liberty Valance, is a lie. Stoddard did not kill the villain. Wayne's Doniphan did. The nation celebrates the lawyer, not the gunfighter. Truth is erased. Legend is enshrined. And Ford, the architect of frontier fantasy, confronts himself in one of cinema's most famous lines. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Leone saw this not simply as a narrative twist, but as a reckoning, the founder of the Western genre acknowledging its illusions. Ford, at nearly 70, recognized that the nation he mythologized was built not only on courage, but on violence, secrecy, and political necessity. The West was not purified through heroism. It was conquered through brutality, compromise, and forgotten men. In that moment, Ford dismantled his legend. Leone understood the gravity. It was as if the king had abdicated. Where Ford hints at disillusionment, Leone would plunge headfirst. Ford frames the lie as a tragic necessity, a moral burden carried in silence. Leone saw a harsher truth: power does not apologize. The gunman dies in anonymity. The politician ascends. In America's founding myth, the sword makes the empire, but the pen claims the credit. Leone absorbed that message and stripped away the last traces of romance. In his world, there is no quiet dignity in sacrifice. There is only a system, the violent act and the polished narrative that follows. Visually, Liberty Valance is stark, black and white, shadows stretch like moral ambiguity. Ford limits his landscapes. This is not Monument Valley glory, but cramped alleys, saloons, newspaper offices. The West is no longer a frontier. It is a social machine grinding toward modernity. Leone saw this compression as a revelation. The mythic horizon shrinks. The land tames, but the cost becomes visible. The gun is not replaced by the law. The law simply puts on a cleaner shirt. Stewart's character rises through politics because of a false legend. Wayne's character burns in silence, dies uncelebrated, and leaves behind only a coffin and memory. The film suggests the world belongs not to the strong nor to the righteous, but to the story that survives. Leone absorbed that lesson with ruthless clarity. In his films, men die brutally, but their legends rarely matter. Empires do not rise because of noble heroes. They rise because someone controls the narrative. Ford questioned the myth. Leone demolished it. In Leone's later work, especially Once Upon a Time in the West, the shadow of Liberty Valance looms. Harmonica's revenge is not celebrated, it is tolerated. The railroad, symbol of progress, crushes lives under steel and profit. The West does not end in glory. It transitions into capitalism, law, and bureaucracy, not cleansed, but concealed. Leone watched Ford dismantle the temple he built and then rebuilt the ruins into a monument of cynicism. This film validated Leone's instinct. The Western myth could be challenged not through parody or anger, but through truth. America did not conquer the frontier through pure ideals. It conquered through force, expediency, and forgotten men. Ford whispered it. Leone would shout it. Do you believe America's myths shape reality, or does reality eventually crumble those myths no matter how beautifully they are printed? Number 3. High Noon, 1952. When Sergio Leone studied Westerns, he wasn't searching for heroes. He was searching for fractures. The moments where the polished marble of the American myth began to crack. High Noon is one of those cracks. Made in 1952 in the shadow of McCarthyism and political betrayal, this film broke the Western spine. It took the heroic sheriff, the most sacred figure in frontier myth, and left him abandoned in the street, shaking, alone, staring down the clock in the inevitability of death. Gary Cooper plays Marshal Will Kane, a lawman who has kept a violent town safe for years. On the morning of his retirement, when he hopes to leave the badge behind and start a peaceful life, he receives a message. A killer he once sent to prison is returning on the noon train, bringing hired guns with him. The townspeople, those he served and bled for, tell him to run. The church won't help.
I sent a man up 5 years ago for murder. He was supposed to hang, but up north they commuted it to life.
The businessmen want quiet commerce. Friends vanish. The badge suddenly weighs more than the gun. High Noon unfolds in near real time. Every scene is a countdown. Every shot of the clock is a tightening noose. Where other westerns use the wide desert sky to symbolize possibility, this film uses empty streets and trapped interiors to symbolize cowardice, fear, moral paralysis. The West isn't vast here. It's claustrophobic, panicked, small. Leone watched this structure closely. Suspense didn't come from galloping horses or big shootouts. It came from time itself. The Western wasn't about open horizons. It was about suffocating inevitability. The hero isn't a gunslinger swaggering into legend. He's a man begging for help, rejected, betrayed. His courage looks nothing like Ford's noble cavalry or Howard Hawks' stoic sheriffs. It looks like desperation. It looks like sweat. It looks like a man out of breath, terrified, questioning whether duty is worth dying for. Kane keeps asking for allies. He receives silence. The American ideal, community, unity, loyalty, evaporates. The frontier myth melts into self-preservation. The West is not a land of brave pioneers here. It is a land of frightened shopkeepers and moral bystanders. For Leone, this was essential. The Western hero does not rise because the community deserves him. He rises because no one else will stand. And when he wins, he is not rewarded. When the dust settles, Kane throws his badge into the dirt. It is not a symbol of honor anymore. It is a burden. He walks away not as a champion, but as a man disgusted with the society he defended. In Leone's eyes, High Noon did something few American films dared. It showed that righteous violence does not create grateful towns. It merely postpones disaster for people unworthy of sacrifice. Politically, the film was a bombshell. Screenwriter Carl Foreman wrote it while under threat from the Hollywood blacklist. Many saw the film as a metaphor for America turning its back on courage, integrity, and principle. John Wayne famously despised High Noon and called it un-American. To him, heroes do not hesitate, do not beg, do not doubt. Leone disagreed. Heroes who never doubt are propaganda. Men who face death trembling are real. From High Noon, Leone took something vital. Tension as philosophy, time as weapon, morality as slow burn. In Leone's films, clocks tick without mercy. Men stare each other down in silence until the air itself feels like a blade. Showdowns are not explosions of action. They are psychological drownings. The moment before violence matters more than the violence itself. A gunshot is not the story. The waiting is. The dread is. The realization that help is never coming. That is the Western truth. Where Ford built myths and later questioned them, High Noon stripped them bare. Where classic Hollywood emphasized courage, this film emphasized abandonment. Where traditional Westerns rewarded duty, this one punished it. Leone internalized the message: civilization does not honor the gunman who buys its peace. It tolerates him, it forgets him, it discards him. The hero walks away not into glory, but into exile. If you risked everything for your community and no one stood beside you, would you still fight? Or would you walk away? Number 2, Shane, 1953. If High Noon showed the Western hero abandoned, Shane showed him doomed. Where other Western legends stood triumphant, Shane introduced a melancholy truth. The gunfighter does not belong in the peaceful world he defends. He is the instrument of violence required to forge civilization, and once his purpose is fulfilled, he must disappear. This theme, more than any gunfight or dusty street, shaped Leone's cinematic soul. Shane is the quiet tragedy behind the myth. It is not a story about frontier glory. It is a story about frontier sacrifice. Alan Ladd plays Shane, a mysterious drifter with polished manners, a soft voice, and a violent past.
One place or another. Someplace I've never been.
He arrives at a homestead and befriends the Starrett family, a hardworking rancher, his wife, and their young son, Joey. Shane chops wood, fixes fences, drinks coffee at the kitchen table, and for a moment, he appears to be something he has never been allowed to be: a man at peace. Joey idolizes him, seeing in Shane the ideal of masculinity and honor that children imagine the frontier to be. But the audience sees something else. Shane is not resting. He is waiting. Violence clings to him like dust to his boots. The town faces a threat: ruthless cattle barons trying to force homesteaders off the land. The tension grows not through sudden gunfights, but through glances, intimidation, and unspoken recognition. Shane knows this world too well. He sees the storm coming before the settlers do. He knows that order is never won through diplomacy when men like Riker hold the reins. Peace, like crops, demands blood. And Shane, whether he wishes it or not, is the one who must spill it. The film builds toward an inevitable clash. Villains circle closer, threats escalate. Joey watches Shane practice drawing his gun in silence, fascinated and frightened. The boy sees what society asks Shane to hide. He is not a farmer, not a neighbor, not a man meant for quiet mornings and family dinners. He is a weapon, and weapons do not retire. They fire until they break. The final confrontation in Shane remains one of the most haunting in Western cinema. Jack Palance's Jack Wilson, with his reptilian stillness and deadly grace, represents the future of violence. Clean, efficient, merciless. Shane rides into town knowing exactly what he is sacrificing. He kills Wilson with precision, then kills Riker and his men. He wins. The town is safe. Civilization gains a foothold. Peace, it seems, is possible. But Shane cannot stay. He walks outside, wounded, slumped in the saddle, framed in moonlight. Joey runs after him, desperate. And then comes the line that still echoes across decades. "Shane, come back." One of the most devastating pleas in American cinema. The hero rides away, not triumphant, not celebrated, but mourned. His gift is his exile. He has saved the family, the town, the frontier dream, but at the cost of his own humanity. Joey's tears are not just for Shane leaving. They are for the truth he learns. Heroes are not rewarded. They vanish. This, more than anything, seeped into Leone's storytelling. The Man with No Name, Harmonica, Colonel Mortimer. The nameless drifters who wander into conflict, kill the necessary men, and ride into mythic emptiness. Leone did not merely adopt the gunfighter archetype, he deepened it. In his films, the gunman is not just tragic, he is cursed. The frontier does not love him, it uses him. He is the last remnant of a violent age, clearing the path for a world that has no place for him. Shane gave the Western its sorrow. It introduced moral erosion, emotional burden, the cost of violence on the soul. It is a funeral disguised as a frontier tale, the lament for a man who might have been gentle if the world allowed it. Leone embraced this truth and amplified it into an opera of dust, grief, and fatalistic poetry. Without Shane, there is no harmonica, no final duel at Cattle Corner, no mythic West slowly suffocating under the weight of its own brutality. Do you believe a violent man can ever truly leave violence behind? Or does the past always call him back? Number 1. Veracruz, 1954. We arrive at the top of Sergio Leone's list, and the irony is rich. His greatest Western influence was not a stately epic, nor a moral parable, nor a tragic meditation on heroism. It was Veracruz, a film soaked in greed, treachery, and frontier ruthlessness. Released in 1954 and starring Gary Cooper and Burt Lancaster, Veracruz took the clean white hat off the American cowboy and dipped it in mud and blood long before Leone ever pointed a camera at the Spanish desert.
Pretty fancy shooting for a man without a quarrel.
That featherhead tried to kill me.
Why not? That's his horse you're riding.
This was not the world of John Ford's noble pioneers. This was a world of mercenaries and opportunists, where loyalty was negotiable and morality could be purchased by the ounce. Leone saw in Veracruz a cinematic prophecy, the first true draft of the spaghetti western. For the first time in Hollywood, the frontier was not a stage for righteousness. It was a marketplace of violence, a place where men smiled as they planned each other's deaths. At the center is Joe Aaron, played with dangerous charm by Burt Lancaster. With his wolfish grin and Colt lightning reflexes, Lancaster does not play a hero. He plays a predator. He is Tuco before Tuco. He is El Indio before El Indio. He laughs at honor, trades comradeship like currency, and treats violence not as tragedy, but as entertainment. Watching him, one sees the genetic blueprint for Leone's rogues, the unpredictable violence, the greedy sparkle in the eye, the sense of a man who enjoys the chaos he creates. Opposite him stands Gary Cooper, the archetypal Hollywood cowboy. But this is not the stoic hero of High Noon. Here, Cooper's character is less moral pillar and more good man among wolves, clinging to a fading code of dignity in a world that no longer respects it. Leone saw in Cooper's weary resolve the same truth he found in Shane. The moral cowboy is antiquated, a relic pushed aside by a harsher, more cynical era. In Veracruz, that struggle is not subtle. It is twisted, tense, always one decision away from betrayal. And then there is Mexico, not as a backdrop, but as a living character. Revolution swirls, alliances shift with the dust. Both Cooper and Lancaster's characters are foreigners exploiting foreign soil for profit, a theme Leone carried into the Dollars trilogy. The Mexican frontier, to Leone, was purgatory, a lawless borderland where ambition rotted into greed, and where the gunman's soul hung permanently in limbo. The tone of Veracruz is relentless cynicism. It is funny, Cruel, savage, and surprisingly modern. Characters do not duel for honor, they duel for gold. Violence is quick and often senseless. Men die without speeches or sermons. When Lancaster smiles, it is not heroic, it is predatory, a shark circling blood in the water. This tone electrified Leone. He did not just admire Vera Cruz, he recognized it as the gateway to his own revolution. Compare the final standoff of Vera Cruz with the climaxes in Leone's films. The seeds are all there. The mutual respect and mutual distrust. The fatalistic acceptance that survival often means moral compromise. The understanding that the West was carved not by saints, but by men willing to bleed for silver and die for pride. And like Leone's films, Vera Cruz ends not with triumph, but with inevitability. Cooper walks away, not victorious, but weary. Not celebrated, but simply alive. Lancaster dies with a smile, given over to the poetry of violence. There is no redemption, only conclusion. For Leone, Vera Cruz solved the riddle of the Western. It stripped away noble illusions and revealed the brutal engine beneath. It did not mourn the passing of the gunfighter. It reveled in the chaos he unleashed. And yet, it also showed that even in a world built on betrayal, a sliver of honor might survive. That thin line between virtue and vice would become the heartbeat of Leone's cinema. In Vera Cruz, the West was no longer a myth, it was a game. And the stakes were life, death, and gold. In a world built on ambition and betrayal, is honor a strength? Or a weakness that gets men killed? So we reach the end, not just of a list, but of a philosophy, a cinematic manifesto disguised as 5 favorite Westerns. Sergio Leone did not simply admire these films. He excavated them. He dismantled their mythology, studied their bones, and rebuilt the Western into something harsher, stranger, and truer to his eyes. Where others printed legends, Leone printed men. Yojimbo taught him the power of the lone wolf anti-hero and the beauty of silence sharpened into violence. Liberty Valance handed him the confession that American Westerns had been telling a beautiful lie. High Noon revealed how time itself could suffocate an audience until the gun finally spoke. Shane showed him the price of heroism, the quiet tragedy of a man doomed by the skills that define him. And Vera Cruz gave him permission to turn the West into a playground of greed, betrayal, and cynical charm. These were not just influences, they were the pillars of a new frontier. From them emerged the poncho-clad drifter, the harmonica-haunted avenger, the gold-hungry rogues, the operatic violence, and the mournful recognition that history is never as clean as legends suggest. Leone once said he was not fascinated by America's myth. He was fascinated by its hunger, its violence, its dreams, its failures. In ruins, he saw truth. In silence, he found music. In the death of the cowboy, he discovered the birth of cinema's most haunted hero. As the dust settles on this list, one question lingers. When you look at the West, not the fairy tale, but the shadow under its hat, do you prefer the legend or the truth? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if there's another director whose secret cinematic blueprint you want uncovered next, drop their name below. Until then, fade out. Dust in the wind, a distant gunshot, and the man rides on.